Guys, what's going on? I hope you guys are well. I hope you guys are staying safe. I hope everything's good wherever you are. Guys, I hope you're keeping safe. I hope you're staying, everything's good from your end. Guys, let's get into this video. Guys, there's been a lot of criticism about Andrade. There's been some people criticizing me, you know, saying that, oh, Andrade is tired of not being able to fight the top guys. He's tired of not being able to get the big fights. Before I get into it, I'm going to break this video down. I want to talk about Kell Brook. And actually, I think this video will be quite related, even the Kell Brook situation. Andrade is in a situation, he's in a very, very predicament situation where he's got a very hard mandatory. And he's been fighting guys who, you know, people think are low-level fighters. And he's managed to keep fighting a load of what we would say nobodies. And I don't really like to call people nobodies, because a fighter that goes in the ring and puts something, I don't think we should disrespect them like that. But we don't look at Quigley as a high-level fighter. You know, I thought Liam Williams deserves a lot more respect. Liam Williams is a good fighter. I think some of you need to look into, and I know some of you said, well, Liam Smith beat Liam Williams. Let me give you a backstory, because some of you are not from the UK. Liam Williams is a much better fighter now than the one that fought Liam Smith. Liam Williams has developed as a fighter. He wasn't as good back when he fought Liam Smith, who Canelo beat comfortably with a broken hand, you know. But neither way, Liam Williams isn't an elite fighter, or he isn't even a world-class fighter at this point. He hasn't really proven himself to be one. The point I'm trying to make here is that was a good win. The Liam Williams fight was a good win. It wasn't an elite win, it wasn't a great win, but it was a good win. But he had struggled in that fight a little bit. Was that because he underestimated Liam Williams? Or was it just that Andrade's got flaws in his game and Andrade isn't as good as what we think? You know, there could be a lot of things. But Andrade now is in a situation where there's people that actually think Janibek can beat him. And he's now deciding to move up to 168. What's the purpose of him moving up to 168? Andrade in his head knows that the Canelo fight is very unlikely, because Canelo doesn't seem interested in fighting him. So, is this the right move for Andrade? I think so. You can arguably say he's avoiding Janibek, but he doesn't get anything from beating Janibek, because Janibek is not a big name and he's a tough fight. But Andrade was saying the same things about Canelo. That Canelo's fighting easy fights. He's not fighting. Well, Canelo fought undefeated world champions. You've got a mandatory who is not a world champion. I believe he's had 14 fights. But yet, you've decided to now move up, because people legitimately think that this guy is an actual threat to Andrade. So it doesn't look good. Even if Andrade is doing it legitimately, it doesn't look good for him, because it looks like you're avoiding a tough fight. And Andrade hasn't had a lot of tough fights. He hasn't been in the ring with a lot of what we would so-called world-class fighters. So now he's in a predicament that he's going to move up to 168. Is it the right move? Yes. It's the right move, because if he beats Janibek, he's not really going to get that much credit. Let's be brutally honest. I know some of you are going to say, oh, he's ducking. Yes. I do think that he doesn't want to fight that guy, because he knows it's a risk, and he knows that if he loses, everything's over. But I also look at it from a business point of view. If I was his manager, I would be advising him to move up. I'll tell you why. There's bigger fights at 168. The 160-pound champions aren't going to fight him. Golovkin's not going to fight him. Charlo's not going to. Well, Charlo looks like he might get the Canelo fight. So that fight's not going to happen. So Andrade's left in a situation where he's not going to get the champions in that weight division. He's tried. He wanted to fight those guys. It doesn't seem like that's going to come off. He's now going to move up to 168. Which is the right move. I'll tell you why. Because there's more fighters there. There's Benavidez. There's Plant, right? All of those guys are craving a big name, craving to become big names. They need those marquee wins. If Andrade doesn't get a big fight here now, he might as well pack it up and retire. If he doesn't get a big fight now, because he's kind of got fighters in that weight division that are in the same position as him, and a lot of them will be willing to fight him. Okay, if he's got any excuse that Charlo and Golovkin don't want to fight him, okay, fair enough. But those guys at 168, I'm very confident Benavidez, Plant, all of those guys will be willing. Morel would all be willing to fight him. Now, again, Morel might be another one where he's thinking that he's an up-and-comer. What do I get from fighting this guy? But Andrade now, there's no excuses anymore if he goes up to 168. All right, he doesn't have to fight Janibek. He doesn't fight Janibek. Some people will say it's a duck. Some people say, you know, it's the right business move. His fans will say it's the right business move. Some fans will say that it's a duck. I don't really care as long as I get big fights from Andrade. I don't care. His next fight is going to be against Zach Parker. Okay, we'll give you that one at 168. The next fight after that, right? If it's some kind of no name or some kind of guy that we don't know, then I'm sorry I'm just sorry. For me, like, you know, I just feel like at that particular point, where's Andrade going? And Steven made a great point on the air the other day, on the live stream yesterday, that he said, well, where is Andrade's career going? What are we, like, where is it going? Like, the management or whatever, like, but then Campos made a good point that Andrade's had opportunities, but he's turned down those fights. Now, which is right, which is wrong, I don't know. The fact is, I'm just tired. I just want to see Andrade in there with a big fight, in a big fight. I want to see him in a big fight. I don't care, like, whose side you. I don't care. I just want to see him in a big fight. I want to see him with a guy that we see as credible. A Plant, a Benavidez, a guys like that. I want to see him in with guys like that. You know, and unfortunately at this point he's not fighting guys like that. So is he ducking Janibek and trying to chase a dream with Canelo, which isn't going to happen? Possibly. Possibly. But the point is that for me it's the right move. It's the right business move. But then Andrade has no right, in my opinion, to criticize Canelo, who's moving up and fighting Makabu, who's a champion, when he's moving up and potentially avoiding a guy at 160 who's a dangerous mandatory, right? That's like Kell Brook moving up to 154 and vacating his title at 147 pounds not to face Errol Spence. Like, Kell Brook would have got all kinds of criticism. You know, but yet Kell Brook did it. He still fought him. So Andrade, it will all be forgotten. This Janibek saga will all be forgotten if Andrade fights a top tier opponent at 168 after Zach Parker, who Andrade has criticized Canelo for the exact same thing, fighting European level fighters, when, let's be brutally honest, Canelo Alvarez has fought much better European fighters than Zach Parker. So the point I'm trying to make here is that I feel Canelo gets a lot of criticism for avoiding Andrade and ducking Andrade. But at the end of the day, Andrade was in the same position now where he had a hard fight, right? And he's made a business move. He's not said, let me go and fight this guy. People think he's a threat and dangerous. No. Andrade's decided to move up to become a 3-weight world champion. But yet when Canelo does that and he goes up and fights Makabu, everyone comes out and says, he's ducking. He doesn't want to fight. He's ducking. But yet Andrade does it and everyone's like, Andrade can't get the big fights. Okay, fair enough. But then stay and fight your mandatory, who people think's a tough fight, who people think's a dangerous fight. But that doesn't make business sense. Do you know what I mean? Like, the same energy you have towards Canelo, who's going up and fighting champions, you're not fighting your mandatory because it doesn't make business sense. That's the only thing that I can. That's the only thing that I can think of. That's the only thing that I can think that why you wouldn't want to fight Janibek. Why not fight Janibek? You know, but fair enough. I'm okay. I think it's the right move from a business point of view. If I was manager, I think that's what we'd be advising, because Janibek's a hard fight, tough fight. But Janibek has said, I'm going to come and chase you at 168. I'm going to win this WBO and then I'm going to come and chase you again. So Janibek's going to go after him again. If Janibek wins the WBO, which I think he will, at 160, he's gonna go after Andrade again. Especially if Canelo vacates the 168-pound titles, which I believe he will do. Andrade, there's no excuses now at 168. There's no excuses. Like, all right, we're happy with him fighting Zach Parker. You know, one fight. But then after that, I'm going to be interested to see who he fights. You know, everybody that I'm speaking to thinks that Andrade has ducked Janibek. Everybody. Ray. The reason why they're saying he's ducked Janibek, because Andrade hasn't fought nobody. People say that who's he fought? So, like, fair enough if Andrade had fought so many great fighters throughout his career, and you would say, you know what, he's avoided that fight, you know. Like, for example, Khan, right? He avoided Kell Brook. But Khan had fought in so many good fighters throughout his career where, yeah, here in the UK, people didn't forgive him. But, like, overall, people will forgive him because they'll say, like, look, this guy's fought a lot of top names. He's beaten a lot of good fighters. He's lost to some as well. But he's got a great resume, you know, and now he's fighting that guy. The point I'm trying to make here is this. Is that Andrade has been around for a very long time. At some point, right, where we have to stop feeling like someone like myself who keeps it neutral, and I've taken Andrade's side on many occasions, it comes to a point where you can't keep blaming everybody else. You have to start looking at yourself. You have to start blaming yourself because he's 34 years of age and he's been around for over a decade. So there's something not right. Like every fighter, I remember Mike making this point, every fighter eventually gets their breakthrough fight. Andrade hasn't. Why? And when there's reports and rumors that he has had big fights offered, you know, we just don't know because I'm not on the inside, so I don't know. But the point is that there's on 168 now, if he doesn't get a big fight now again, then what excuses are there going to be this time? I just don't want to hear any excuses anymore. I just want to see him fight somebody. You know, so I hope this move with him moving up to 168 brings Andrade some good luck. And he gets to fight some big names. Because I'm desperate to see Andrade in there with a big name now. I'm desperate. I'm almost intrigued, and it's almost become, you know how like it became this like Floyd Mayweather, would he lose his O? Like every time you just watch his fights just to see if he would lose his O. It's become like that with Andrade. Will he ever step in the ring with a world-class fighter? Will he ever get a big name? That's basically, that's how it's become. The intrigue of seeing Andrade in a big name fight. Because in 10 years, he couldn't get anyone that is a big name world-class opponent in the ring. It's sad because he could have been an all-time great, possibly. We just don't know. Maybe he's not, but maybe he could have been. But he's certainly not going to be now because he's not got a resume. He hasn't got a resume to be an all-time great. You know, and it's sad that there's a lot of careers like that. You know, I hope that Andrade makes good money where, you know, he's financially okay after his career. I wish him all the best. Like I wish all fighters all the best, and I wish all fighters, you know, because like, at the end of the day, whether you think Andrade's been in there with he's still a fighter and he's still a guy that puts himself through training camps and dedicates himself, and he's been doing this since he was he was a young kid. So I hope Andrade all the best, but at the same time, you know, as a boxing fan, I've been very disappointed with, you know, the way his career's gone, to be brutally honest with you. Like the fights, not getting the fights, it's just been disappointing. And I actually like Andrade, to be honest with you. But I'm sorry, like comes a point where, you know, you just can't keep defending something, you know. It's just, it is what it is. Anyway, let's talk Kell Brook. Guys, you know what? I want to talk about this, moving on from the Andrade stuff. There's a narrative that gets spun. There's a narrative that always seems to get spun with Kell and Brook. I see a lot of people nowadays say, well, Brook would have destroyed Kell in his prime, 2014, 2015, if they were both in their primes. And I never seem to understand that narrative. I never seem to understand what Brook fans or what boxing fans that may be just giving their opinion about the fight get their confidence from, that Brook would have destroyed Amir Khan in his prime. Brook's career, majority of his career, was fighting lower tier, low level fighters. Whereas majority of Amir Khan's career was spent fighting world class, good fighters. Right? Kell Brook had a very close points win against Sean Porter. That was it. Apart from that, he never did much else at world level. He never really beat anybody else that we could consider world class. Right? So, on the basis of him beating and the eye test, or him beating a Sean Porter, who, by the way, you know, drew with Julio Diaz, who Amir Khan beat in his next fight, right? We're basically saying that Kell Brook would have destroyed Amir Khan. Like, how? I don't... What are we basing this off? What are we basing that confidence off? No one's been able to destroy Amir Khan like that. Like, yeah, Amir Khan got knocked out by Danny Garcia, but didn't people... Like, again, you need to look deeply into someone's career. Amir Khan was emotionally attached to that fight because of things that Angel Garcia said. And Danny Garcia was getting battered in that fight. Danny Garcia caught Khan because he was fighting recklessly, let's not forget. Khan was fighting very recklessly in that fight. He was in the pocket for majority of the fight, trying to knock Garcia out. And Amir Khan, unfortunately, doesn't have the chin for him to go toe-to-toe with, especially with someone like Danny Garcia who can punch. But a guy that fought Canelo Alvarez, and in my opinion, won majority of the rounds against Canelo Alvarez, right? Who was boxing beautifully against Canelo Alvarez, who's 10 times better than Brook, got better hand speed, better footwork, better timing. He's just a much better fighter than Kell Brook. If that guy was struggling against Amir Khan, where do people get their confidence that Brook would have destroyed Amir Khan? Basing off what? What facts are we basing this off? Just the eye test or a close points win against Sean Porter? What are we basing that off? You know, as you guys know, I don't just base everything on the eye test unless you look like a generational talent like Jaron Ennis, and Kell Brook wasn't that. He wasn't that. His fans tried to make out, like I know some of his fans tried to make out Brook was a generational talent that was just underachieved. The fact is that Brook was a good fighter. He wasn't some kind of killer that people make out 147. He never hurt anybody at 147. Any kind of note, you know, Frankie Gavin and guys like that were stopped on their feet. Carson Jones went the distance with this guy, for God's sake. Zarafa, you know, went the distance with this guy. Where are we basing all this confidence off? He's beat, like, I can't think, like, what was the best knockout win he had in his career? Senchenko? A guy that was stopped by Paulie Malignaggi before Kell Brook got his hands on him. And Senchenko wobbled him. So the point I'm trying to make is, where's this confidence coming from with Kell Brook? Like, the guy had one close fight, one win of any significance against Sean Porter in a very close fight. And Sean Porter wasn't even as good as the Sean Porter that fought Errol Spence. Oh, he had a good fight with Errol Spence. He lost. He got beat down in that fight. You know, and it frustrates me that people try to make out like Kell Brook was this kind of monster, and people try to look at, because he never really fought anybody of any note. Like, here's the thing with Kell Brook. Kell Brook fought top tier fighters. He managed to win a close decision against Sean Porter, and people live off that win, especially his fans. But there's no guarantee he would have beaten a Danny Garcia. He would have beaten a Devin Alexander. It's all talk. It's all talk. There's no guarantee. Styles make fights at world level. And I do agree that Kell Brook would have been a hard fight for Amir Khan. It wouldn't have been an easy fight. But I don't buy into the narrative that some of his fans tried to make out Kell Brook would have destroyed him, because Kell Brook hadn't done anything to prove that to me. Kell Brook hadn't destroyed anybody at Khan's level for me to say he would have destroyed Amir Khan. Amir Khan had fought at a much higher level and hence became underrated as a result of that, because Amir Khan was fighting better fighters. Who had who had Kell Brook beaten? You know, as good as Danny Garcia. He managed to beat Sean Porter. But that's about it. That's about it. You know, Lamont Peterson, for example. Lamont Peterson was a great fighter. What's to say Kell would have been able to beat him? What's to say Kell would have beaten, he definitely wouldn't have beaten Canelo when he got smashed to bits by Crawford. Crawford would have beaten Amir Khan and Kell Brook in his prime. In their primes. Crawford's an exceptional talent. The point I'm trying to make is this narrative that gets spun is nonsense. And I've been saying it for years, it's nonsense. Brook's a good fighter, nothing more than that. He did nothing really. When you look at his resume, it's nothing. One win of any kind of significance against a guy that lost most of his big fights as well. And Kell Brook was soundly beaten in every other fight that he had. Golovkin battered him, Spence battered him in the end, you know, and Terence Crawford, it wasn't a fight. You know, he got stopped badly in that fight. So the point I'm trying to make is that people always talk about Kell Brook this, Kell Brook that. Oh, his timing was brilliant. When he fought Sean Porter, like Ryan Rhodes, who's an Ingle fighter, Amir Khan had him losing. Okay, people will say Amir Khan don't like Kell Brook. Ryan Rhodes, who was an Ingle fighter sitting in the studio, said he thought the fight was a draw. He said, I thought that the judge that gave it a draw, that was a more fair result. Jim Watt, who was commentating at the time, had Kell Brook losing against Porter. Tyson Fury said that Kell Brook lost that fight. Porter should have got that decision. It was a nip and tuck fight. Barry Jones on Boxing Social said that if Amir Khan had fought Kell Brook, you'd have to make Amir the favorite just because of the level of competition that he's fought and how many good fighters he had beaten and he'd got in the ring with, just on experience alone. Whereas Kell's not really done anything at world level. His only real win was against Sean Porter in a nip and tuck fight. That's it. Apart from that, who's he really beaten? Nobody. His resume is blank. You know, if you look at Amir's 6 top wins and you look at Kell Brook's 6 top, it's not even close. It's chalk and cheese. People need to stop basing it on an eye test because Brook was battering lower level fighters. If you look at Brook's highlights reels, I'm looking at Brook's highlight reels because I wanted to analyze the fight. I wanted to analyze Brook and Khan. But it's hard to do because a lot of Brook's fights are against lower tier fighters. His wins against lower tier fighters. I don't care how well you do against a good fighter, right? If you lose. Because what that tells me is you lost. You weren't good enough to win. I look at their wins. When I look at Khan and Brook, when I analyze, I don't look at Khan against Canelo. I don't look at Khan against Garcia. I look at Khan as when he wins. I look at Kell Brook when he wins. Not when they lose, when they win. And when I look at some of Kell Brook's fights, well, most of them are against lower tier opposition. Most of them are against lower tier opposition. Whereas Amir Khan has got a lot of wins against very good fighters, world champions, former world champions. And this is the point I'm trying to make, is you can't judge a career or base a career off a guy that's fighting lower tier fighters, because at the end of the day, of course, if you're going to fight lower tier fighters, you're going to look Andrade, for example. And that's why I said this will lead on well to Andrade, is that Andrade fought lower tier fighters, looks $1 million. But if he steps up and fights Canelo, it's going to be a different ball game. And that's what happened with Kell Brook. As soon as he stepped up a little bit, even against Porter, his performances wasn't as dominant as what they were when he was fighting those Carson Jones and fighting Senchenko's and fighting your Saldivias. It weren't. Why? Because those guys weren't up to scratch. So that's my take on it. Leave your thoughts in the comment section below. And guys, remember to please like, share, and subscribe to my channel. I'll see you guys in the next video.